Hello dear friends, welcome back. We are discussing about the hip bone, right? And we had said that we will discuss about the important markings of this bone in detail. So posteriorly in the whiteboard, you can see in the previous lecture I had explained the theory of the bone. Now we are going to see each and every part, and we will apply that theory on this bone, and we will learn about the parts of the ilium. So as I had told you previously that this pubic bone is mostly composed of three bones. How many bones? Three bones. The first, the flap shape, and the largest bone, that is the superior bone, that is your ilium. Then inferior anteriorly, right friends, learn this word. Inferior means lower, anteriorly means in front. So inferior anteriorly there is the pubic bone, and posterior inferiorly there is the ischial bone, right? So superiorly ilium, anterior inferiorly there is the pubis, and posterior inferiorly there is the ischial bone, right? And all these three bones unite together at this cup-shaped depression. This is called the acetabulum or the acetabular fossa. Now if you want to see, we can divide these three bones as such, right? So look carefully. Look. And then if we see interiorly like this, right here. Now look carefully. You can see now I have divided the bone into three bones. This one, the pubis, this one, the ischium, and the above, the superior most is the ilium, right? And you can see here this part of this acetabulum, which I'm pointing with my finger, or let me use this ball point, right? This part is called the part of the pubis bone. Then this part, you can see here, this is the part of the ischial bone, and the upper part of the acetabulum is the part of the ilium, right? So ilium, ischium, and pubis, all the three unite together and they make a fossa here, they make a depression here. This is called the acetabular fossa or the acetabulum, and here will be the head of your humerus, and it will make the hip joint. So that will lead to the formation of your lower limb. So look carefully. This is called hip bone, and this hip bone is made up of how many bones? Three bones: the ilium, the pubis, and the ischium. Now we have already discussed about the theory of the ilium, and let's see all those parts here in this video of this bone. So as I had told you that we will discuss the ilium in three different sections. The first, the ends; the second, the surfaces; and the third, the borders, right? So your ilium has, as I had told you, now please, it's a request to you guys that please keep your copy in front of you and watch the video and check your copy, right? If you do like this, you will learn the ilium bone forever, inshallah. There will be no difficulty for you guys. So look here. I had told you that the ilium has two ends, the upper end and the lower end, right? As you can see here, this is the lower end of your ilium, and this is the upper end, right? And I have told you that this upper end is called the iliac crest, right? This is called iliac crest. Now this iliac crest, I had told you, it has four parts, right? As I'm holding this bone in my left hand, right, the acetabulum is laterally and the pubic bone is anteriorly. So this is the left hip bone or left pubic bone, right? Now look carefully. This is pointing anteriorly, so this is the anterior part, and this is pointing posteriorly, so this is the posterior part, right? So I had told you that the iliac crest or the upper end is divided into four parts, if you remember, and if you have your copies in front of you, right? This part is the anterior part, right? The interior part, And this anterior part I had told you is called the anterior superior iliac spine, right? So this is the anterior superior iliac spine. That's great. Then there was the ventral segment, right? So let me color the ventral segment with the green color. So the ventral segment will start here and will come up to here. Look carefully. This is the ventral segment is a little bit longer, right, than the dorsal segment. So this whole represents your ventral segment, right? And I had told you that this ventral segment has three parts. If you remember, and if you have your copies in front of you, this is the ventral segment, right? You can see it here. So look, anterior superior iliac spine and the ventral segment. Then there is the dorsal segment, right? So hold this is your dorsal segment. Look, with blue color, I'm mentioning it with blue color. So this is your dorsal segment, right? And then there is the posterior part, and this is called the posterior superior iliac spine. If you have your copies in front of you, I have written, right? So the iliac crest is divided into how many parts? 4 parts. Anterior superior. Superior means above. As there is anterior inferior spine, right? This is anterior inferior. Why anterior? Because it is anteriorly. Why inferior? Because this spine is present lower to or inferior to this spine, right? So we say the anterior superior iliac spine, the ventral segment, long ventral segment, the short dorsal segment, and the posterior superior iliac spine. So these are the 4 parts of the iliac crest or upper end. And this lower end of your ilium will be this one, right? Which makes the acetabular fossa along with what? Along with the ilium and along with the pubis and ischium. So this is the lower end. This is the upper end, this is lower end. Now look carefully. I had told you that this is the spine, the ventral spine, right? Then there is the ventral segment. Now we have written that the ventral segment has 3 parts, right? The lateral lip, the medial lip, or we say the outer lip, the inner lip, and the intermediate part, right? So look carefully. This is your ventral end, and all this you can see in green color, ventral segment. The ventral segment has an outer lip, right, and a medial or inner lip, and an intermediate part, right? So these 3 are the parts of the ventral segment. Now the dorsal segment was having 2 parts. The dorsal segment was having 2 parts. And what are those parts? There was the lateral slope and the medial slope. The medial slope and the lateral slope you can see here, right? This is the medial slope and this is the lateral slope. Why? Because this is the medial part and this is the lateral part. Done. And then posteriorly we have the posterior superior iliac spine. So these are the 4 parts of the iliac crest, right? The 2 ends we discussed, the 2 ends. Now we know that we have written here on the whiteboard that there are surfaces of the iliac bone. How many surfaces were there? There were 3 surfaces of the iliac bone, right? What are those? If I hold this bone in position, right, this will be the outer surface. Why? Because this is the acetabulum, here is your femur, right? So this is the outer surface, this is the inner surface, and this is the medial surface, this is inner surface, no problem. So this outer surface was also known as the gluteal surface. Why? Because here are the gluteal muscles, right? So the gluteal surface, okay. Then here is the iliac surface, right? And then here is the sacropelvic or sacroiliac surface, right? This rough surface is called the sacropelvic surface or sacroiliac surface. This is the iliac surface which has the iliac fossa, right? And this is the gluteal surface. Done. And I had told you in the previous lecture the theory which we were writing on the whiteboard, that I had told you that the gluteal surface has 4 parts, and these 4 parts were divided by 3 lines. And what are those lines? These lines are, the first one is the anterior line, right? The anterior line, then there was the posterior line, and then there was the dorsal line, or we have written here the inferior line, inferior line. So the anterior line, the posterior line, and the dorsal line, the inferior line. So there will be, for example, this is the anterior line, right? Then if I draw it here, this is the posterior line, right? And then there was the inferior line. So how many lines are present there? There are 3 lines present, right? The anterior line, the posterior line, and the inferior line. So your gluteal surface is divided into 4 parts by 3 lines. So this gluteal surface has 3 important lines: the anterior, the posterior, and the inferior line, right? So this was about the the gluteal surface. Now we come to the iliac surface. This iliac surface has a depression here, and this depression is called the iliac fossa, right? So this is iliac fossa. Then there is the iliopelvic surface, or sacroiliac surface, or sacropelvic surface, which is a little bit rough here, right? And this surface is little bit medially, right? This surface is medially. Why? Let me show you here. Look carefully. Here is the iliac surface, right? And this is the gluteal surface. Then here, if we take off this sacral bone, here will be the sacropelvic surface, or sacroiliac surface, right friends? You just remember that the sacropelvic surface is a little bit rough in nature, right? And we had said that this sacropelvic surface or sacroiliac surface is divided into 3 parts, right? The first one, the tuberosity, right? This rough part is called the iliac tuberosity, right? Which I am making with red color. So this is iliac tuberosity. Why? Because it is a little bit rough in nature. Tuberosity means rough surface, right? So iliac tuberosity. And then there was the auricular surface, right? This is your auricular surface, which I am shading with green color. So this is your auricular surface, right? And then there is the last one that we have is the pelvic surface. So you can see here is a part which is the pelvic surface, right? Like this. So the sacropelvic surface is divided into 3 subparts: the iliac tuberosity with red color, the auricular surface there, and the pelvic surface there. These 3 parts are the parts of the sacropelvic surface. This is the iliac surface, and this is the gluteal surface, right? Okay, then we know that the iliac bone or the ilium has 3 borders, I had told you, and these borders are, the first one is the anterior border, the second one was the posterior border, and then there was a medial border. So look carefully. If I am holding the bone anterior posteriorly, right? So this is the interior border, right? You can see here the anterior border. Then there is the posterior border, right? And then there is the medial border here, right? Which was called the iliopubic eminence, I had told you, right? So this is the medial border. Now look carefully. The anterior border is formed by what? The anterior superior iliac spine, the notch, right? This is the notch. This is anterior inferior iliac spine, right? So they unite together and they make the interior border, right? And then there is the posterior border. So the posterior border is formed by a posterior superior iliac spine, right? Then there is the notch, then there is the posterior inferior iliac spine, and then there is the greater sciatic notch, right? This is the greater sciatic notch. So they unite and they make the posterior border, right? And then there is the medial border. So this medial border was also known as I had told you, that this is also known as the iliopubic eminence, right friends? Now let's fastly recap this iliac bone, right? The iliac bone has two ends, upper end and lower end. The upper end is also known as iliac crest. The iliac crest has four parts: anterior superior iliac spine, the ventral segment, the dorsal segment, and the posterior superior iliac spine. The ventral segment has three markings: the lateral lip, the medial lip or the outer lip, the inner lip, and the intermediate space. And this posterior or dorsal segment, which is the short part, it has two parts: the lateral slope and the medial slope, and it provides attachments for different muscles. We know that. This is the upper end. Then there are three borders: the anterior border, posterior border, and medial border, right? And then there are three surfaces: the iliac surface, the gluteal surface, and then there was the sacropelvic surface, right? The gluteal surface is lateral and it has three important lines: the anterior line, the posterior line, and the inferior line, right? And then the sacropelvic surface has three important parts, that is the iliac tuberosity, right? Then there was the auricular surface, and then there was the pelvic surface. So other than this, we have the notch, right? The anterior superior iliac spine, the anterior inferior iliac spine, the posterior superior iliac spine, the posterior inferior iliac spine, the greater sciatic notch, right friends? So this was about the external features of your iliac bone. Now we will move fastly towards the pubic bone and ischial bone. So see you guys in the next lecture. I hope you guys liked the lecture. If you watch this lecture 2 or 3 times, you will learn all the parts of the iliac bone in a big detail, and you will never forget it, inshallah. Friends, it's a humble request that if you like our lectures and if you learn from the lectures something, please subscribe our channel. Please share our lectures with your classmates and with your friends. Nowadays, you know that social media is growing fastly, so please share these lectures on social media accounts. Whatever you have, that will be a great pleasure. So see you guys in the next lecture. Till then, Allah Hafiz.